frustrated with success, but it's not the conditions, the other people, the various other externals that determine your happiness, but mostly it's from inside. Can you elaborate?
Okay, yeah. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So if you say that happiness comes from inside, what does it mean actually? Well, I would say that it's more that fulfillment comes from inside, and happiness can be at different levels. So when we eat some delicious food, we do get some pleasure. That is coming from outside. If we go to nature and see some beautiful scenery, we get pleasure. That is also, we can say, coming from outside. At one level, we can even say when we go to a temple and feel some pleasure, that also is coming from outside. We are going somewhere to a particular place. So it's not so much that happiness can't come from outside, but rather it is that our dependence on external happiness, that is what will cause us problems. Because at a physical level we need food, which is external need, and with respect to food, it's that the absence of food causes pain, but the presence of food, okay, it relieves the pain, gives some joy, but it can't give enduring, it can't give lasting joy. So at the physical level, is there happiness? The scriptures also talk about various levels of happiness. So the happiness in the earthly planetary system, happiness in heavens, happiness in Brahmaloka, happiness in Brahmajyoti, happiness in Bhakti. So we could say there is physical happiness, there are different kinds of happiness, but none of these happiness, firstly, they cannot last forever or even for long, and secondly, we can't count on them. They may be there today and they may be gone tomorrow. I may have a beautiful house and I feel joy, satisfaction, a sense of achievement. Oh, I've got this house, and that's one way of happiness. It's not that we deny that happiness, but it's just that tomorrow if something's changed, then what do I do? If my happiness is coming only from there, then I'll feel that my life is worthless. So basically, we could say there's the body, the mind and the soul. So our consciousness is invested in the body, it is invested in the mind, and it is originating from the soul. So when the consciousness is invested in the body, then things connected with the body will also give us pleasure. What to speak of body? If I'm attached to cricket, then a cricket match may happen thousands of miles away, I may get some pleasure in connection with cricket also. So basically, it is the consciousness getting connected with and attached to or invested in something that gives us the experience of pleasure or pain with respect to anything. If I have, say, no interest in baseball, and some World Cup of baseball is going on right next to me, but I don't get any pleasure about it. So it's the investment of consciousness that determines where we get happiness and where we don't get happiness. Now by default, when the soul is in a body, the soul's consciousness is in the body, and therefore physically pleasurable stimuli will give pleasure. But these are, because it's not the soul, it's separate from the soul, so the pleasure from there is temporary, it is peripheral to the soul. And for us, the mental happiness, say for example, somebody likes to read, then they may read and they may think about the book, and they relish the book. So we could say subtler happiness in some ways can last longer. Somebody is interested in concepts, say somebody is into research, then they get some pleasure. Oh, I want to solve this problem, I want to do this, I want to do that, and they absorb. Their happiness may not be so effusive, like laughing, but there is pleasure in that also. So basically, when the pleasure comes from things which are further and further away from the soul, then the happiness becomes less reliable, less lasting. The closer it comes to the soul, the connection is likely to be more enduring. Now at present, even spiritual happiness for us may depend on externals. So we feel spiritual happiness when we go to a program, we participate in some kirtans, we take darshan of the deities. So this is because for the soul, presently the consciousness is rooted from the mind to the body, and at present the soul practically doesn't experience itself separate from the body mind. Although the soul is separate from the body and mind, the soul doesn't experience itself that way. Its consciousness is, you could say, almost not just invested but locked in it. So that's why even spiritual reality we experience through the body and mind. But by the practice of bhakti, as we become purified, so then more and more, say right now we need to go to the temple to feel spiritual. But if we keep practicing bhakti, then spirituality starts getting impressed on the mind. And then we can remember Krishna, we can think about Krishna's darshan, we can think about Krishna Katha, and even if physically it is not there, still we can be spiritual. And actually spirituality is not just mental also. Ultimately the soul becomes awakened, and even if the material mind is not involved, the soul can directly perceive Krishna. So when you talk about internal happiness, it is about seeking happiness internally. For us, the way to the internal is also through the external. So bhakti yoga is about, there are other paths where you just turn away from the world, go to the forest and try to peer inwards and look at spiritual reality. But bhakti doesn't make it such a difficult process. Such a consciousness is outward, it's very difficult to withdraw it from outward. But within the outward direction of consciousness, regulate it. Okay, instead of letting it, you want to look at beautiful things, instead of just looking at anything and everything beautiful, look at the beautiful form of Krishna. Want to eat delicious things? So just eating anything and everything, eat food that is offered to Krishna. So in this way, the connection of the consciousness with Krishna is established, and that the connection may start with through the physical itself. But then it comes to the mental, and eventually it comes to the spiritual. And then when it comes to the spiritual, then there is no more need for the external. That doesn't mean the external is rejected, but there is no dependence on the external. It is said sometimes that the deity worship is for less intelligent people. Some people say like that. Now what it is that it's not exactly like that. That those who are not spiritually so evolved, they need to see Krishna's form externally. Now advanced devotees, it is not that they don't care for the deities, but even when the deities are not present, they pursue Krishna. But of course, if deities are present, we have such wonderful pastimes, Chaitanya Charan of Madhavendra Puri, having special reciprocations with Kirchor Gopinath and others. So in that sense, if there are external manifestation, they also delight in that. But they don't need that. We, in the sadhaka stage, we need external manifestations by which our consciousness will become spiritualized. And then as we get a spiritual connection with Krishna, then we can relish happiness internally itself. Did that answer your question? Thank you. Yes, Prabhu.
I have a question on law of karma.
Yeah.
Conceptually, I think I understand, but I think there's still some fog there. So essentially, all of us have a karmic balance, so to say, of good karma and bad karma, which manifest. And devotional service, bhakti, essentially where you dovetail your actions with Krishna, essentially creates a karma. Now the question is, if you create a karma, does that mean that it neutralizes your bad and good karma? Because essentially the question is, are we cheating ourselves out of this in the sense that because you become devotional, you will not get the reactions which you have, or is it getting minimized? And at the end of the day, you can only get liberation once you have minimized all your bank balance, right? The good and the bad. And the good and the bad don't offset each other, so you still get in good and bad. But what does your karma do to good and bad karma? And also, if I can take it further, it's not only what happens in this life, right? Because otherwise it becomes very difficult to fathom that someone who's very good in this life is getting all the bad reactions. So how do you connect with kind of reincarnation, because that it requires you to have that construct.
Okay, yeah. So what does a karma actually do? Does it neutralize our past karmas? See, the word akarma in the Bhagavad Gita itself has two distinct meanings. There is one verse Karmanya akarmaya pashed akarmani cha karmaya sabuddhiman manusheshu sayuktah kritsna karmakrit. So it says akarmanya karmaya pashed, that in akarma one who sees karma, and karmanya akarma, same thing, karmanya karmaya pashed akarmani cha karmaya, and in inaction one who perceives action, and in action one who perceives inaction. Such a person is a seer. Now what does this verse mean? It may simply mean I am not a seer. I don't know what is happening in this verse. But actually there Krishna is using a literary device called Zyugma. Zyugma means that Z-A-U-G-M-A. It means that sometimes we may use the same word but with two different meanings. So you may say he took his hat and he took his leave. He took his hat and he took his leave. So the word took is used. First is he took his leave is a phrase where he left. Took his hat means he picked up his hat. So the word took is used in the same sentence but the meanings are different. So the same word is used in the same sentence but with two different meanings. That's called Zyugma. So here the word akarma and karma are used in the sense of Zyugma. So akarmanya karmaya pashed. That means that one akarma means, the word akarma can mean inaction, not doing any action, or the word akarma can mean no reaction or action that produces no reaction. In fact, the word karma itself has four different meanings. The karma can refer to action, karma can refer to reaction. We are suffering our karma. That means we are suffering to karmic reactions. Karma can also refer to the system of action reaction. Nobody can escape the law of karma. And karma can also refer to one particular kind of action. There is karma, akarma, vikarma. There are three kinds of actions. Karma is one kind of action among them. So similarly, the word akarma can also mean two different things, corresponding to these four meanings. So in the first line, as Krishna says, karmanya karmaya pashed, karmani cha karmaya, karmanya akarmaya pashed. One who's in action, one who sees inaction, and in inaction, one who sees action. What this means is, while doing action, one sees that actually this action is not going to produce any reaction. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, if you fight, but you fight without any selfish motive, you fight in the mood of service, then you will not get any reaction. So that is, you are fighting, but your karmanya akarmaya pashed. You are doing karma, but through this karma you are not getting any reaction at all. So here the word akarma means no reaction. And then akarmani cha karmaya. Akarmani cha karmaya means that in this case, Krishna is saying that one who does no action, one who just goes into the forest and renounces the world and sits in meditation doing nothing, but that person may also be getting karmic reaction. How? If they are contemplating sense objects, they are scheming to enjoy the sense objects, then they may get reactions over there. So basically Krishna is, through this verse, when Krishna is saying such a person is a seer, what essentially it means is, Krishna is saying that the person who sees beyond the externals to the internal. Not just a person who is externally acting or internally not acting, externally acting or not acting, but internally what is their motivation. If their motivation is to act in the mood of service, then they are not going to get any reaction. Then that is akarma. If they are internally acting in a mood of getting reaction for self-centered enjoyment, then they are going to get reaction. So with this understanding, these two understandings of the word akarma, now if we move forwards, we will understand that actually akarma primarily refers to if we are doing akarma. That means we are doing action which doesn't get any reaction, or it can mean we are doing no action. But that is not what we are talking about. When we try to serve Krishna, we are doing action which gets no reaction. So that itself does not neutralize bad karma. But by doing action in mode of service to Krishna, we please him. And then aham tvam sarvapapebhyo mokshayishyami. He can free us from sinful reactions. Now, exactly what happens to us when we are practicing bhakti, that will vary. Means it can be that Krishna can take away all the karmic reactions, or Krishna can take those karmic reactions and he lets them come upon us in a way that is the best for our spiritual growth. So then it is not exactly the karmic reactions coming, it is Krishna handling it all. It's like, say, a powerful person's son has committed some crime. They are caught for speeding. They're given it, and then they're taken by the police. Now the police may put that person in, if it's not a speeding, some serious crime they committed. The police may put them in jail. In jail they may get punishment. Now if their father is a very responsible citizen, very respectful citizen, they say, okay, father says, I'll take care of him, I'll discipline him. The father may also discipline him. He may also have to do some course, do some work, do something for restitution. But then in the second case, they are in the home. In the home, the father says, do this, don't do this, you cannot do this, you have to do this. There is some amount of restriction, there is some amount of deprivation in both cases. But one is if it's in the police station, it's the rule of law. If it is in the home, it's the rule of love. So like that, even for a divorce, so in a sense, when the father has, okay, I take charge of, you don't have to take care of him, I'll take care of him. In a sense, from it's come out of the system of law. But still, it is that the father may decide that, okay, for disciplining this person, we need to do something. So that means a devotee may externally be seeming to be suffering karma, but internally, a devotee is in Krishna's care. And because the devotee is in Krishna's care, that's why whatever happens is even more in Krishna's vigilance. And Krishna arranges in such a way that the devotee can come closer to him. Okay.
Sorry, Prabhuji,
Yeah.
1 minute on this. I had heard this from different sannyasis or
Yeah.
meditation. I just wanted a
Yeah.
clarification. So, someone said that Krishna does not interfere with our karma, or he can, but he will not, because he does not interfere with the laws of material nature. And another argument was that he will interfere to the degree we surrender. To that degree, he will take care of our karma and manipulate it or give it as a purification. So which
Okay, yeah.
is it?
So, does Krishna not interfere with the laws of material nature, or he interferes to the extent of our surrender? I would say the laws of material nature is a very broad term. What do we mean by that? For example, one law of material nature is that everybody is going to grow old, get diseased and die. Then whether we are devotees or non-devotees, that law is going to act on everyone. So it's not that Krishna is going to interfere with that. So similarly, we could say that if I put my hand in fire, that's a law of material nature. Even if I am a devotee, is it that I demand that Krishna should cause my hand to not get burnt? Well, you could say Krishna can do that. He may do it for, say, Prahlad, and he was put into the fire by the demons. But that is exceptional. A devotee doesn't demand that way. So we could say, as far as the laws of material nature, there are some aspect of the laws which are universal. And Krishna doesn't interfere with that.
Which is birth, death, old age.
I said, so I'm just talking about laws of material nature in terms of there is a particular way in which this world functions. So old age, disease, death could be there. Or simply, you could also say that if I have diabetes, but if somebody very lovingly cooks food filled with sweet for me, and out of service attitude towards them, I take that prasad. I will simply be taking them, so that's a devotee, I don't want to displease this devotee. Well, the service attitude is good, but still my body may have a reaction, isn't it? So what I'm talking about here is that if our actions in this world entail some consequences, a devotee doesn't demand that Krishna intervene and stop those reactions from coming. A devotee is intelligent, a devotee is thoughtful to understand that certain reactions will come and certain actions I need to do so that I can avoid those reactions. So some laws of nature, in terms of certain actions being associated with certain reactions, that is going to happen.
So like every action will have a...
No, not every, that's a sum. Say for example, if on a cold night, if I have got a bad cold, but I decide I want to go for Mangal Aarti, I don't wear warm clothes, I go out in the cold, that may aggravate my cold. So I have to use my common sense, my intelligence to act in such a way, not thinking that I have immunity from the laws of nature. Now we use the word laws of nature also in terms of karmic reactions. At one level I can also say that my eating sugar-filled food when I have got diabetes, that's bad karma. It's not exactly sinful, but in that situation, it's not advisable. It will have its reaction. So when we use the word karma, we usually talk in terms of moral thing. Something is morally right, something is morally wrong. But it could be something practically right and practically wrong also. Now to eat sweets when somebody has got diabetes is not morally wrong, but it's practically harmful. So actions produce reactions. So we as devotees, we don't demand that Krishna interrupt the law of action reaction so that he protect us. So we choose our actions wisely, both from the moral perspective and the practical perspective. Having said that, as far as the past karma is there, what we have done and the reactions to that, Krishna, he does protect us from them. Now, it is that a devotees may have subjective ways of looking at it. That means we have to see what way of looking at it is most favorable for our bhakti. So if I see that, okay, this pain is coming to me because it's a reaction to my past karma, and then I have to take shelter of Krishna, I have to absorb myself in Krishna, that's how I can go beyond this pain. So then here we see the karma as something separate from Krishna. Now that karma is just a law of the world and that is coming upon me, and Krishna is, so we could say Krishna is not the cause of our suffering, Krishna is the cure for our suffering if we take shelter of him. This is one way of looking at it, where we in a conceptual sense separate karma and Krishna. Of course ultimately it's under Krishna only. It's under Krishna only, but it's not that Krishna is personally doing it. This is a law of material nature which just works on its own. And so if this, the other understanding could be that, okay, I am in Krishna's, I am now surrendered to Krishna as much as I can, and I am under Krishna's care. And Prabhupada says at some places, Parikshit Maharaj saw that Krishna had come as a takshaka. That Krishna is coming as a takshaka to free me from this body and take me to him. So in one lecture also he says, a devotee feels Krishna has come as this pain to detach me from the body. Now, if a devotee if that can make one Krishna conscious, then that's great. That means we can see this pain is actually, it's not different from Krishna, it is Krishna. And that is also very high level of Krishna consciousness. But sometimes we may see that this is a problem, this is a pain, and so if we start thinking this Krishna is coming at this pain, then we may become resentful of Krishna. Now why is Krishna doing this to me? I can't bear this. So we have to see which way of looking at things is anukul for our bhakti. So that's why if you see in the Bhagavatam, there are different approaches in, say, how people deal with things. So not just in Bhagavad, in the broad Vedic literature, there are times when a problem comes and the devotee tries to solve that problem. Like Arjuna, he fights. His way of surrendering to Krishna is by raising his bow to fight. Draupadi, her way of surrendering to Krishna is by raising her hands in surrender to him. Now you take care. So similarly, just as these two are different ways of surrendering, similarly we can say there are different ways of looking at the problem. So sometimes it may be more favorable for our devotion to see that this is simply the law of karma acting and Krishna is here, Krishna is the shelter for me. Sometimes it may be that it is Krishna coming as this problem. He is coming here to detach me from this. So that can also be a vision, but we have to see which way of looking at things is favorable for the nourishing of our devotion. If I start thinking, it is Krishna coming as this problem, and then where do I take shelter of? What do I take shelter of now? So it is, okay, I'll give another example to illustrate this. Say somebody, say we say at one level, one regulative principle is no intoxication. So we see alcohol as Maya and we want to give up alcohol. But then Prabhupada also said that if somebody is unable to give up alcohol, let them think that the taste of alcohol is Krishna. Just like the taste of water is Krishna, so the taste of wine is also Krishna. And in that way, they will become Krishna conscious one day. They will be Krishna conscious at that time itself, and they can become Krishna conscious eventually. So I would say in Krishna consciousness, there are different ways of being Krishna conscious. Just like if we go to a temple, we may offer obeisances to all the deities, but we may have a personal connection with one deity. Now, some devotees pray a lot to Radharani, some may pray to Krishna, some may pray to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, some may pray to Nityananda, who is most merciful. Now they are all God, but we may personally connect with one. So just as we can worship different forms of Krishna, so similarly in a particular situation there can be different ways of being Krishna conscious. So both are true, that yes, it is Krishna only who is coming, but it is also Krishna who is beyond all this, and this is simply happening in material nature. So whichever way of being Krishna conscious is favorable for our devotion, whichever inspires us to take shelter of Krishna more, that is what we accept. Okay. Thank you. Krishna.
I had a couple of questions. One question was that I think it's in the first canto when Vidura comes back to instruct Dhritarashtra, it's described that Satyavati was also there. So my understanding was that she had left, so she must have witnessed the whole Mahabharata war and everything like that. Is that the case? And it seemed like she wasn't as strong as personality then, because she seemed quite passive throughout that.
I don't remember reading it in the Bhagavatam. It says Satyavati was there.
It does, and it says, because then I thought maybe Satyavati must be another Satyavati, but then it said in the translation, the daughter of the fisherman, Satyavati. So then
Maybe we can look at it afterwards.
Oh yeah.
I can talk about it afterwards. We can look at it specifically. So sometimes the Mahabharata and the Bhagavatam give different narratives, and it could be the Mahabharata is described that Vyasadeva comes and tells Satyavati that there's going to be calamity, so better you not be here, you renounce the world. And she becomes like a you could say a female hermit sort of. But the Bhagavatam describes some things different. So it could be that in that, because the Bhagavatam and Mahabharata sometimes describe from different kalpas, the same history. So Bhagavatam could be a different narrative. Thank you.
Can I just say, so is that the reason that there are different narratives, because it's from a different culture?
Yeah, that could be one explanation, yes. Thank you. Yeah. Some other question you have? Yeah. Okay. Fine. I can think about it.
Yeah, and so Narakasura is the same as Brahmasura.
Yeah.
And so he's the son of the earth. So how did he get corrupted by Banasura? Is there a past one?
Well, the Krishna book just says that he associated with Banasura, but where exactly?
Because he said he corrupted him.
Yeah, I have not read anything about that. Thank you.
Nothing mentioned of that. When?
Yeah, when it happened is not mentioned in 10th canto.
You partly answered my question, but and I don't know how you get this happen 3-4 times now, but I will still ask the question because maybe you might want to add on that. I do see suffering as grace of the Lord.
That's
what could be your take on that? Because suffering obviously is very difficult to handle. In Krishna consciousness we see it in a different ways and the non-devotees see it. But if we see that he is the Lord has personally chosen, he has invested so much time in giving the suffering, there has to be a very good reason. He's not giving the same suffering to my next door neighbor. So obviously that suffering is I am the kind of the chosen one.
okay.
How do you see that?
So we see suffering as the grace of Krishna, and it's specifically coming to me. That means Krishna has chosen me. There must be some purpose for it. Yes. Let's look at some scriptures. How they look at it. The most famous verse for talking about suffering is Tattenu kampam susamikshemano bhunjan eva atma krutam vikapaham rudva gvapurbhir vidadam namaste jivet yo muktipade sadaya bhag. Now here let's look at each line to try to understand what is being said. Tattenu kampam susamikshmano. That this is your mercy. This is Brahmaji praying to Krishna. Thinking of the suffering. Tattenu kampam susamikshmano. Mano, and things like this, Susamiksha, with the eyes of knowledge. Bhunjan eva, that person endures. What is it? Atma krutam vipakam. It is my own actions that I am suffering. So then what is so now Srila Prabhupada explains over here that the devotee sees the suffering as being minimized by Krishna. But here what the verse itself is saying is that the devotee sees it as your mercy, that is your mercy, I am suffering my own karma. Tattenu kampam susamikshmano bhunjan eva atma krutam. Atma is very clear. The devotee is not holding Krishna responsible for the suffering. It's my own karma I am suffering. And the most important thing is Rudva Gvapurbhir Vidadam Namaste. That with the heart, with the body, and with the speech, one offers obeisances to the Lord. Jivetayo, one who lives like this, Mukti Pade Sadai Bhag. That person has become entitled to liberation, to attaining eternal life with Krishna. That means the most important thing over here is Rudva Gvapurbhir Vidadam Namaste. That one stays connected with Krishna, wholeheartedly connected with Krishna. So it's taking shelter of Krishna that is most important. Now that means connecting with Krishna is what is vital. Now with what consciousness one does it? One can say this is my own karma, but it has been minimized by Krishna. So what is Krishna's mercy? Krishna's mercy is that he has minimized the karma for me. I could also see that now sometimes Prabhupada also says that for the pure devotees they have no karma. It is simply for our instruction that the pure devotees go through some sufferings. So we could say that, and Prabhupada gives the example of sometimes the mother-in-law teaches the daughter-in-law by teaching the daughter. The daughter has not made any mistake, but the mother-in-law tells her, don't do like this, do like this. So that means it is that here the suffering has got nothing to do with karma, it is simply Krishna's arrangement. It's Krishna's mercy. But Prabhupada talks about this primarily he said this is for exalted devotees, their suffering is for their glorification. For us sadhakas, it is for our purification. For them it is for their glorification, means although they went through so much sufferings, but still they stayed so faithful to the Lord. How glorious is their devotion. Now for us when the suffering comes, it is, now what do we mean by purification? If it is for our purification, purification can mean just the exhaustion of our past karma. The past karmic reactions, they also cause some impurities. But ultimately the most damaging impurity is our own misdirection of our heart from Krishna, isn't it? So if the suffering makes us take shelter of Krishna, the suffering makes me realize nothing else is going to help me, only Krishna is going to help me, then that itself is purification. So again, if when I say impurity is what? The lust, anger, greed, kind of these things in my heart. And what do? They take my consciousness away from Krishna. But if my consciousness goes towards Krishna, then I am free from that suffering. I am free from that misdirection, which is the cause of suffering. So basically, when the suffering comes, it inspires us to take shelter of Krishna. That is the vital thing. And yes, seeing the suffering as Krishna's mercy, it is, whether we see the suffering as Krishna's mercy or we see Krishna's mercy even in the suffering, not the suffering itself. Like I don't know, where did I speak yesterday? I was giving the gratitude seminar in Soho. It says even if we can't be grateful for all situations, we can be grateful in all situations. We can't be grateful for all situations. If I lose my job, if I get a terrible health crisis, if somebody tells me, be grateful for this, well, it will be almost impossible. How can I be grateful for this? So, but I can say, okay, this is a terrible thing, But there are so many other things right in my life. I am grateful for them. And even among the many things that are right in my life, there are these things which are especially helping me to deal with this problem. And for that I am grateful. So I would say that it's, if some devotees may say, even that in that problem itself, oh, I am grateful. I am grateful for this problem. That is also, that's like we have Radhanath Maharaj quotes in the Journey Home book of St. Francis. He says that what is bliss? He says, if you are fasting and you go to somebody's house and you ask for something and that person reviles you, chastises you, condemns you, then taking that suffering for the sake of your Lord, that is bliss. So now that is one way of looking at it. So when we feel that this is how, by taking up this suffering for the sake of our Lord, I am actually, I'm getting an opportunity to serve Him. I am an opportunity to express my devotion for Him. So then that, if that is the consciousness, then that is wonderful. So first time I went abroad, I had gone to Australia before I came to the West. So at that time, somehow when I landed at the airport, because the time zone had changed, the whole experience was the first time for me. So I just got out of the airport and somehow the plane had come almost 1.5 hours before. And then I was just waiting there. And I didn't have any Australian currency. And there at the phone booth, they said that you can't contact. And then they had a policy by which the wheelchair assistant dropped me up to a particular point. And they said, we drop you here, your escort should come here. Now I had my luggage and I couldn't move from there. I just didn't know what to do. So I was just, it was the first time abroad, I was quite overwhelmed. But then suddenly it struck me that here I know there are devotees. They will find me. They may be a little late, they will come, they will find me. But then at that time I thought, when Prabhupada came to America, he just had no one. There's no one waiting, especially when, say, he landed at Boston, but he said, I didn't know whether to turn left or right. Especially when David attacked him and the 22nd Avenue, he just was homeless. He didn't know what to do. So at that time it just struck me that Prabhupada did so much. Now for me just to wait for some time till somebody finds me, there's no big deal. So although it was bewildering, it was overwhelming, but just thinking that way, this is a privilege. And I can do something in the service of Srila Prabhupada. So I would say that we have to see what is favorable for us. So if we can see it that way, that I am taking up this suffering in the service of the Lord, and this is just a way in which I express my devotion to Krishna. And it's a privilege that I have the opportunity to express my devotion like this. So if that feeling that I have been chosen, then that, rather than making us proud or making us feel miserable, it makes us feel treasured, not in an arrogant sense, but in a, you could say, treasured. Then that is favorable. So I was talking with one very senior sannyasi. He was being very fiercely criticized. So he was telling me that he has done nothing wrong, but there's so much criticism. So he was saying that fame, he says, criticism is the price you have to pay for fame. In this world, nothing comes one side, happiness and distress. So fame is glorification, but in criticism will come with it. The world is a place of dualities. So he said that actually to glorify Krishna, to spread the fame of Krishna, sometimes we also have to accept fame. But when we accept fame, we will also get criticism. So when you see that this actually is a price I am paying for glorifying Krishna. So then rather than blaming, why are these people criticizing me? Yes, we can try to address them at that level, try to address their misconceptions. But seeing beyond the specifics, if that vision can help us to become more devotionally minded, more inspired to serve Krishna, then that is wonderful. Okay.
Is grace and mercy interchangeable, or does causeless mercy really exist?
Is grace and mercy interchangeable means?
The words, two words.
So yeah,
Is grace
yeah,
different
that's,
from mercy?
I think that's the same. But how is that related to causeless mercy?
That was my follow-up question, because in I think in Christian literature, grace and mercy are different. We see mercy as mercy. We don't talk about grace of the Lord, but in
What is the difference? I never heard about.
I can't remember exactly. There's a clear cut. One comes with one you're not, when you're not eligible, you still get it. Is I think mercy, and grace is there all over there, and you just have to put your antennas up and you can get it.
Really?
There's a whole sort of work on the Christian side of it, but we don't.
I don't see any difference like that, because there's krupa. Well, I think there's a difference between krupa and karuna. Krupa is more, but I don't think that's equivalent to karuna. Is more of compassion.
Yes.
It's not exactly the same. I don't see any specific difference as far as I know in our philosophy.
And causeless mercy, because it's always very confusing to devotees. How does causeless mercy come? Does it exist? Are we
Okay.
eligible for it? How does it
Okay, so does causeless mercy exist, and are we eligible for it? Yeah, see, causeless mercy means that not that there is no cause for it, but it does not come because of the cause. Let me put it this way. What I mean is that suppose a beggar is begging. Now the beggar may beg very fervently, and a charitable person may give some charity. The beggar's begging is not the cause of the charity. It is the charitable person's compassion. The beggar may beg, but a charitable person is not obliged to give. So we could say that the charitable person's charity is independent of the beggar's begging. It is not, in the sense, it is not, when we say causeless, it means that there is no binding cause-effect connection. There is no law of karma kind of connection. If you do this, this has to come. But we could say, Prabhupada also gave the other example that once he was walking by a pond, and there was a person who was feeding the ducks, and then others were quacking, and there was one duck quacking very loudly, and this person was feeding that duck more. So Prabhupada said, like this, if you cry for Krishna more, Krishna will give you more mercy. So now, Krishna's mercy is reciprocal, but it is not necessarily proportional. Reciprocal means we have to endeavor, but it is not that our endeavor determines Krishna's mercy. It is not that because we have endeavored this much, so therefore we deserve this much mercy. Now, Krishna's mercy will come because he is merciful. There is a story in the Bible about how God's mercy is independent of us. So there is a story that there is a group of people who are unemployed, and they are desperately looking for some way to earn some food for the day. So there was a wealthy person who came. In the morning he was walking by, he says, "Oh, you want some work? Come to my field, you pick the field." And he said, I'll give you this money. It is a good amount, for more than worth for that doing. And then that person again went by the same marketplace. In the afternoon he saw some more people over there, and they were also working. They wanted some work. Come to my field, I'll pay you money. And in the early evening he went. So some more people again over there. Just come in the field, I'll give you some work. And when the day ended, he paid all of them the same amount. And then the first people protested, we worked throughout the day and they worked only for a few hours. Why are you paying all of them equally? He said that my condition with you has nothing to do with my condition with them. When you agreed to work for me, I agreed to pay you something. So I am paying you that. So Jesus tells the story to illustrate this point that we have to endeavor, but it is not the amount of our endeavor that determines the amount of mercy. There is no quantitative correlation. We do have to endeavor, and that attracts Krishna, that makes Krishna give his mercy. But so in that sense, Krishna's mercy is reciprocal. There is a reciprocation. We do something, Krishna does something, but it's not proportional. That I did so much, so Krishna has to give me this much. So that is Krishna's independence. So causeless means that there is no binding cause-effect connection. There is we could say that a person begging for help may inspire the compassion in even a compassionate person's heart, and they may give more charity. That is true, but that doesn't mean necessarily that person's begging is the binding cause. It is the giver's compassion that is the cause. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, but you just mentioned about proportionality, but the more the extent we surrender, the extent Krishna is.
So I would say proportionality more in terms of mathematical. It's reciprocity is definitely there. The more we surrender, the more Krishna will reward. That is true, but it is not necessarily that because I have surrendered more than you, so I deserve more mercy than you. How do you quantify mercy? Each person is an individual. So each person will be dealt with by Krishna in a different way. Now somebody might just say, if they have terrible cancer or something, at that time, in the last 2-3 years of their life, they come and practice bhakti. Sometimes some devotees, they are practicing bhakti, they practice for 6 months, 1 year, and then they have cancer and they don't want to live for very long. Sometimes the spiritual master gives them initiation. Some other devotees have been waiting for 10 years for initiation. He don't get initiation. And so why is that? It's like the soul is going to leave this body. That does not necessarily mean that they will get liberated and go back to cottage. But the connection with the parampara and the connection with Krishna is established. So we can't demand. Some circumstance may say that the spiritual master may be inspired. Let me offer initiation. So similarly, in general, we can say that there is the more we endeavor, the more Krishna will give us the mercy. The more we surrender, the more Krishna will give us the mercy. But it is not in terms of a mathematical quantity. It is not that because Yashoda Mai endeavored for this much time, that's why after that Krishna allowed himself to be tied up. It was not the amount of endeavor that he did. It was just she endeavored at one particular point. Krishna was pleased. Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So if you are aspiring for a guru and things are just not falling into place, does that mean that Krishna thinks that you're not ready or you're not worthy of being a disciple?
What do you mean by things are not falling in place?
It's just not materializing in terms of becoming a disciple.
No, is it that the spiritual master is not ready to give initiation, or is it that
Logistics
one is not able to chant that many rounds, or what do you mean by that?
That is there.
Now, what do you mean by logistics then? I mean, I'm trying to understand.
Spiritual master is not ready.
The situation is not working out practically in terms of the spiritual master may not be giving initiations or something like that at that point.
Okay, yeah. So now, if somehow circumstantially we are not able to get initiation, although we are ready and we are committed enough for that, then how do we see it? Does it mean that Krishna feels that we are not yet ready for initiation? So in general, as I said, it's very difficult to put a finger on why exactly something is happening. So it's best to interpret the situation in a way that is favorable for our bhakti. So if thinking that, maybe Krishna feels I'm not so qualified, so I have to become more serious about my bhakti, that inspires me to become more serious, then that is favorable. But the same thought makes me think that, when will Krishna think I'll become qualified? Maybe Krishna will never think I'm going to become qualified. So better let me stop trying only. Right? Let me stop trying and I become disheartened in my bhakti. That is not favorable. At that time, what I can think is, actually initiation is important, but ultimately initiation is a matter of the heart. There are both ways pastimes are there. That there was a devotee who was doing, in the early days of our movement, there was not a devotee, there was a young person who came to the San Francisco temple and is very eagerly asking questions. But he did not tell, he was actually writing, he was a student of religious studies, and he was simply writing an essay about the Hare Krishnas as an assignment. And that's why he was asking questions. And he seemed very sincere, asking all kinds of questions, sitting and hearing talks. And then Then he decided that devotees are going to get initiated. He came to know that devotees are going to get initiated. He asked, can I become initiated also? So at that time rules were not that strict. Devotees thought, he comes he comes for the programs, he hears, asks questions. And from his perspective, he was thinking that he just wants to get the Hare Krishna experience. And he saw initiation also as one part of the Hare Krishna experience. So then he just came for the initiation, sat for the fire sacrifice, got a name, and then he just left. And then yad gatva na nivartante. He never came back after that. So then they later came to know that he was coming because of this religious studies motive. Then they told Prabhupada, and he took initiation, but then he did like this. And Prabhupada said, I never initiated him. Now, what do you mean I never initiated him? Prabhupada actually gave him the name. He sat in the fire sacrifice. But Prabhupada was stressing the point that initiation is not just the attendance at a particular ritual. It's not that at the time of death, Krishna is going to check whether we have attended a particular fire ceremony or not. Krishna is going to check the state of our heart. So if we are committed to Krishna, then commitment itself is as good as initiation. And we could say it's not the initiation that takes us to Krishna, it's the process of bhakti that takes us towards Krishna, and initiation makes us more committed to the process of bhakti. The more we become committed to the process of bhakti, the more we move towards Krishna. So if we are feeling, I've been practicing bhakti for so long and still I'm not getting initiation, what can I do now? Then we should think that actually real initiation is in the heart. Not that we minimize the outer initiation, the ceremony of initiation. We would, whenever we get it, we'll be eager for it. But just because I'm not getting it, that doesn't mean I'm not going to make spiritual advancement. I can make spiritual advancement even now. So it's every single mantra that we chant, every single bhakti activity that we do, we are growing spiritually by it. It is not just the mantra it is not just the attendance and initiation that transforms. It is actually every single activity that we are doing in bhakti that helps us to grow spiritually. Okay? Thank you.
Keshav is the person I spoke to you about
Okay.
service, about organizing your future trips. So I just wanted to introduce, and then we can always talk about logistics later.
Sure.
So because it would be nice that he
Yeah, certainly. Yes.
take this service and
Okay.
you have
Thank
one
you.
person who can then
Yes, ma'am. Sure. Hare Krishna.
Can I just ask one question?
Yeah, please. Yes.
We have your voice vibrating in our house almost on a daily basis because our son is addicted to your Mahabharata series lectures.
Oh, okay.
And
They told me.
he's listening to them again. So he's gone through the 75 lectures and he's starting again. And it's almost impossible to get him to listen to anything else. So I just wanted to ask, have you got any plans of, doing Ramayana characters or, anything that the kids will enjoy?
Yeah. Actually, yes. First time I went to America, I went to Seattle.
Yeah.
The devotees there were hearing the Ramayana and they told that all the kids were hitting the Mahabharata. And they told me, Prabhuji, next time when you come, we won't allow you to come to Seattle unless you have done Ramayana. So I started 3 times, somehow I was not able to complete it. I definitely have a plan to do it.
Yeah.
But it's when the classes are formal, even if you're tired, even if something else comes up, you just speak. But when it's a recording, sometimes something else comes up, I just keep postponing it.
Right.
So I had to just give up a little bit of laziness.
Yeah.
So you pray that I can give up that laziness, then I'll do it.
There's no laziness there, you're so busy. And you'll only release them on YouTube once you've recorded all the lectures? Or will you do
No,
them
if
one
you
by
search on YouTube Ramayana Chaitanya Charan,
one?
there are already a few lectures, but they're not exactly the same systematic way it is over here. There are, and more than on YouTube, on the Spiritual Scientist, there are a lot of lectures on Ramayana already. Because every Ram Navami I have given classes, and every not just Ram Navami classes, I have given a series of classes.
Okay, brilliant.
So each Ram Navami I think must have till now last 5 Ram Navamis, 5 classes must be there. So 25-30 classes will be there in Ramayana.
Okay, I'll search for them.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Very well. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
There's one analogy I just cannot understand. Shall I read it or give you the book, Prabhuji?
Yeah.
It's Upanishad. The capitalist cannot curb the communist simply by political maneuvering, nor can the communist defeat the capitalist simply by fighting for stolen bread. If they do not recognize the proprietorship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all the property they claim to be their own is stolen.
So, so how? No. The question is what? How is it stolen, or what is the analogy?
I don't understand the analogy at all. I don't understand what it's trying to say.
Okay. So when Prabhupada says in the Ishopanishad purport that the communists and capitalists are fighting and they cannot resolve it either by political maneuvering or just complaining about stolen bread, what does it actually mean? Prabhupada is using the contemporary political situation of his time to illustrate a universal principle. See, generally in Shastra, I will talk about a broad principle before I answer the specific, that in Shastra, whenever we read anything specific, we need to understand that there is a specific principle, there is a specific statement made over here. So, you could say the specific application. And then we have to look, okay, what did this specific statement mean in its original context? So, now communism, capitalism is only few decades old. So, we may know about it. But long before that, if something had happened, we may not even know about that history. So, what does this statement mean in its original context? That's the first question. The second question is, what is the time independent principle underlying this concept, underlying the statement? There's a time specific example. What is the time independent or context independent principle over here? And the third is, how does that context how does the timeless principle apply in today's context, apply today? So, in this context, what Prabhupada is saying is communists and capitalists are fighting, and both want to promote their ideology, and they feel that is how they are going to solve problems. They want to do one-upsmanship, but he is saying it's not going to work. So, he basically his capitalists are trying to do political maneuvering, try to sign a deal with this, do a deal with this, and try to move gain more power. And communists are trying to take the moral high ground. They say that actually, all the wealthy people have taken the money that is earned by the labor of the poor people, and they are becoming wealthy. This is discrimination. Change it. So what they are saying is, fighting for stolen bread means they feel that the bread which is earned by the poor people is simply accumulated in terms of the huge amount of profit by the wealthy people. So the laborers, especially in the industrial revolution, it was that the laborers would work, and sometimes in factories the conditions would be inhuman, and the capitalists would become fabulously wealthy, but the people in general would be terribly in terrible distress. So he's saying that just saying, oh, you have stolen bread, that is not going to solve the problem. He says both of them have to acknowledge that ultimately everything belongs to God. So he is taking a conflict at his time, and he's saying at a material level you cannot solve it unless you acknowledge the proprietorship of God. So Ishavasya principle, how without applying it we cannot solve problems, that's what he's focusing on over there. So now in today's world we may say capitalism, communism, that battle is not there so much only. But there are other battles. There is a battle between two different countries or different issues, and unless they recognize God, they are not going to be solved. So that's the universal principle that we can focus on. Okay. Thank you.
One more question, that's for my daughter. She's saying, my question for Prabhuji: did Krishna create the Big Bang, which created the universe, or did he created it without using the Big Bang?
Okay. Did Krishna create the Big Bang which created the universe, or did Krishna create the universe without the Big Bang? Yeah. Let's say that firstly it is we have to understand that there are different models of the universe, and to simplistically overlap two different models is not a very good idea. Yeah.
She has to hear, so to keep it.
Okay. So two different models means that there are the universe itself can be looked at in different ways. If we consider, let's start with something simpler. We have our own body. Allopathy looks at the body in a particular way. You see, there are organs, there are chemical balances, and there are flows which need to be regulated. Ayurveda looks at the body in a very different way. Ayurveda usually says that most problems are because of the imbalance of kapha, vata, pitta, or they may say most problems are because of the digestive fire being weak. Now, Ayurveda, allopathy may say there is no such thing as digestive fire in the body. There is no fire like that. There is that metabolism happening, but there is no digestive fire. So now these are two different models. Just like, say, if you have a map of UK, we may have a political map which will show all the boundaries. We may have a physical map which may not show any of the state boundaries or district boundaries. It may only show this is the mountainous area, this is the plateau area, this is the rivers. So it's the same territory, but the focus is different. Now there is some correlation between the two, but there is difference also. So basically, science looks at the world in a particular way. What it does is, science looks for material causes for material phenomena. When Newton saw the fruit falling, Newton believed that God existed. But when he asked what made the fruit fall, he was not looking for the answer, God made the fruit fall. Yes, you could say God is the ultimate cause, but he wanted to know what was the mechanism by which this fruit fell. And that is how he came up with gravity. So, science and God actually, they study the universe at different levels. Science looks for material causes for material phenomena, or material explanations for material phenomena. Whereas God is himself not a material cause. By definition, he is non-material. So therefore, the Big Bang theory is one particular theory which scientists have proposed to explain the origin of the universe, based on their particular way of looking at things, which is looking for material causes for material phenomena. And within the scientific field itself, there are critics of the Big Bang theory. There are different theories also. There is the steady state theory, which says that universe as it was now, that is how it always has been. It has very few proponents, but still there are proponents of that. And then there are people who say the Big Bang, also there is something before that. They say there is an endless cycle. Some people say the Big Bang, before that was a big crunch, and then the universe existed, it expanded, it contracted in a big crunch, and then again it began and expanded. So they say Big Bang, big crunch, the cycle is going on. Some people say that actually at the start of the universe, the universe and anti-universe came up. And that's how they try to solve the problem of nothingness. From 0 you can have -1 and +1 coming. So basically, we don't have to take issue with science about scientists. Now, if the scientific evidence were to say that it became the mainstream scientific opinion, the Big Bang theory is the way the material world operated, material world originated, then we could say, okay, based on this evidence, within this particular model, this is the explanation. And then we can say that yes, it is Krishna who is the ultimate cause of all causes. So we even in the Big Bang theory, there is no explanation of what caused the Big Bang. And even in the Big Bang theory, even now provisionally assuming it is true, there is Dutta Karma Pro, Dr. Michael Cremo. He has written a full book about called Human Devolution, in which there is one chapter called A Universe Designed for Life. So there he talks about, even if we accept the Big Bang theory, from there to come to the world as it is now, it requires so much precision that for it to happen by itself is very unlikely. So the example he gives is, say, when there are many factors, but one simple and visually understandable factor is, if the explosion took place, then at that time there are two forces. One is the force that throws all matter apart, and the other is the force of gravity which contracts the matter. Now there has to be a delicate balance between the two. If the force of gravity is too strong, all the matter will collapse into itself and nothing will happen. and then we just have another singularity, no universe will take place. But if the explosive force is too strong, then the matter will just go apart so fast that there will be no places where the matter will concentrate. And they say because matter concentrated in some places, that's why atoms were formed, electrons, atoms, and then planets and everything was formed. So if the separating force, the explosive force was very strong, then we would just have a uniformly distributed dust cloud all over, nothing more. So there has to be a delicate balance between the gravitational pull inwards and the explosive force outwards. It's if somebody is sitting at the bottom of a well and they throw a ball up, and now if they don't throw the ball with strong enough force, it will fall back into the well. If they throw it very fast, it will go completely out of the well. But if they throw the ball with the exact amount of force so that it comes and sits on the sill of the well and doesn't fall inwards, doesn't fall outwards, that will require extreme precision. So that is the kind of precision that will be required. So even if we, for argument's sake, say that the Big Bang theory is true. Now we are not saying whether it is true or false. That is, we are philosophers. We are looking at the philosophical question. We are not looking at the scientific question. Scientific question is, okay, this is the material phenomena. What is the material explanation for this phenomena? So if based on the scientific evidence, scientists come to the conclusion that the Big Bang is how the universe came, then that's fine. Then the question would be, first of all, where did the starting material from the Big Bang came from? What actuated it? And from there, how did it come here? So we could say, if the evidence says that Big Bang is how the universe came about, then we could say that the Big Bang also requires some monitoring. That's why I think Bhakti Saudhamata Maharaj, who was my Srila Prabhupada scientist disciple, he wrote a article called, he said, beyond the Big Bang to the Big I. Big I means E-I-E. So the Upanishads say that the universe began with Saha Aikshitaha, the glance of the Supreme Lord. So there has to be some monitoring to the universe. So if the Big Bang theory were true, then we can say that it is Krishna who originated it, and it was he who monitored it. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Shall we stop? Yes, sure.
Sukadeva Goswami, so he was Brahman realized up until he heard the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I've got two questions about Sukadeva Goswami. Firstly, pertaining to how he took birth, or how he was conceived in Vyasadev's wife. So there's one explanation that he was the parrot, and then Lord Shiva, he was listening to Lord Shiva's recitation, and then he flew into Vyasadev's ashram and flew into Vidika's mouth. And but I was reading in Srimad Bhagavatam the other day how actually it explains that when Vyasadeva placed the semen into his wife, and then Sukadeva was born. So I couldn't quite understand. Yeah, it seemed to contradict a little bit because it mentioned that specifically.
I don't see necessarily it could be contradictory. It could also be that the soul doesn't always have to enter through the semen. Normally it enters through the semen, but there are different ways in which, if you say even if the soul enters through the semen, there are so many sperms. So which sperm through which it enters? So you say that at the time of conception, what the consciousness of the couple is, that determines what kind of soul will be attracted. But then if the soul is already in the semen, then how do you determine which soul? How is the consciousness determining that? The soul is already there in the semen, isn't it? So one understanding could be that during union there are many sperms that enter, and they all may have souls, and that particular soul that particular sperm which contains a soul whose consciousness is compatible with the consciousness of the couple at that time. That is the sperm that will go and impregnate the egg. And then that's how that particular soul will be attracted into their child, and they will become their child. But then we also have that and then I think the fourth canto is the story of how Diti she united with Kashyapa at an inauspicious time, and then it is said at that time the associates of Lord Shiva, the inauspicious beings were moving around, and they impregnated the Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu into the womb. Now that would mean what? Were they already in Kashyapa's semen and then they came there? So basically this whole process is quite mystical, and I would say that in general the soul's entry into a particular body and the soul's departure from a particular body to the next body, the Bhagavatam gives, or our tradition gives, some explanation of it. It is not necessary that every single time it has to happen in that same way. There could be other ways in which it may also happen. Thank you.
Another one is, basically in our Sangha we've been going through Canto 1 and now we're on Canto 2. So although in Krishna book originally, I was reading about Brahma and thinking, okay, he makes mistakes, my respect and just reverence for Lord Brahma since reading the second canto has just really
gone off, yeah.
So much, he's like my hero. So we were just discussing, because we're going through the 7th chapter of the second canto, and we're discussing about Lord Indra, but it doesn't seem like he always seems like a baddie, like he just gets jealous. Like he stole the horse from Sagara Maharaj's sacrifice, and then Brita Maharaj. So we tried to explain that. Well, Krishna chooses people to sort of be that example, so they're actually exalted, but couldn't find many sort of examples to just.
Oh, we talk about Indra. Okay, yeah. So Indra seems to be like a baddie. That's a nice word. So he always is a person who does anti-devotional things, and then he has to be corrected. So how do we maintain a reverential attitude? Is he a great person? See,
If I can just add, like after he took the horse of Brita Maharaj, when Lord Brahma came and he said, actually Lord Indra is good, and you can't kill him and stuff. So they were glorifying him. They're saying you're just like Indra. So that's why.
Okay. So Indra is still glorified sometimes after he does some wrong also. Yeah. Why is that? So I would say that there are two different aspects to it. First is that the Bhagavatam is spoken to a particular audience, and all the stories within that are told from that audience context. What that means is, the Bhagavatam is essentially talking about taking people from dharma to paradharma. See, the Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj is not a sinful person at all. It doesn't have to tell you have to give up sinful activities. It says that give up kaitava dharma. That means give up dharma, artha, kama, moksha and practice parabhakti. So, in every particular book there is a particular purpose, and everything will be presented in that book in the light of that purpose. So, because the Bhagavatam's essential message is to raise people from dharma to paradharma, so then those who have practiced dharma, even attained perfection in dharma, how even they are not good enough. That will be demonstrated by showing how those who are practicing the paradharma are higher than them. So, Indra represents the person who practices dharma very well, and that's how he attains the post of Indra. So, the stress of the Bhagavatam is rise from dharma to paradharma, and that's why Indra becomes the example to repeatedly illustrate the inadequacy of just practicing dharma without coming to paradharma. If you look at the Rig Veda, where the purpose is to inspire people to practice dharma, artha, kama. The Upanishads talk about moksha. The Rig Veda, there's one Western scholar, he wrote that the Rig Veda is the most materialistic religious book I have ever read. Now, what do you mean by materialistic religious book? no, not necessarily contradictory. What he says is that this book is filled with how to get material gains by practicing religion. Oh, you want a child, you want a harvest, you want this, you want that, do this, do this, do this. So, that's what the purpose of the Rig Veda is that. And in the Rig Veda, actually there are more hymns to Indra than to even to Vishnu. Because in that context, the goal of that book is to inspire people who are materialistic to become religiously materialistic. They are not so mature that they can become devotees, the spiritualists. So for that purpose, then their model of success is Indra. And so Indra will be glorified for them. So in that book, we will not have much glorification of Vishnu. So each book has its context and its purpose. So when we see it in the light of that purpose, now the Bhagavatam is spoken to an audience who already is steeped in Vedic knowledge. And in that sense, they already have an awareness of Indra's greatness. So for them, it serves a constructive purpose that Indra is, that even the person who is this great is not great enough. You have to rise higher. But when we don't study the Vedas at all, we just come directly to the Bhagavatam, then Indra almost becomes like a buffoon.
Yes.
You know, a person who keeps committing mistakes. And he has to be corrected and he never seems to learn. It's not like that. He's a very exalted person. And that's why there are passages, you know, when, as I said, when Prithu Maharaj is being told, don't punish Indra, you know, he's a great person. Even in the Mahabharata, Indra is very greatly glorified. And even in the where is this? Yeah, in the prayers that, or verses that Arjuna says, when he is remembering Krishna, after Krishna is departed, therefore says, so there he says that it is by Krishna's mercy that I was able to go to heaven in this body and I was able to sit on the same throne as Indra. So he considers that a great honor. If Indra is simply a materialist, if you think like that, then why would Arjuna, who is a pure devotee, consider that an honor? But he knew Indra is a great person. And when Arjuna went to heaven, he got to sit. No mortal in this body gets to get to heaven. And when he goes to heaven, it will just simply offer some prayers and offer some obeisances. But to get on that, sit on that same asana. So he said, this is Krishna's mercy on me. So these are some sections, even the Bhagavatam, where we can see that Indra's position is also recognized.
Okay, can I just add something?
Yeah.
You know, there's a Brahma Vimohan Leela, and Brahma realizes that he has made a mistake. So he obviously goes via, he can't go directly to Krishna, so he goes via Surabhi cow, that please ask pardon to Krishna, I can't face him, so he hides behind him. And so Krishna says, I can't pardon you because what you've done to they have to ask pardon from the people of Raja. So then there's this Brahma Kund, which has all the sewage and all the dirt of whole of Vrindavan, and literally the sewage flowing into that. That's what Brahma Kund is about. So Brahma says that this is, you know, okay, I've made a mistake, but this is like too much. And what about Indra? And he keeps committing mistake. So what is quoted is that when Indra created the Samantaka cloud and tried to punish Vrindavan,
he united the Vrajavasis, yeah.
And united them, and they were able to look at Krishna all the time. So he actually brought all the gopis and gopas to Krishna, so under the Vrindavan and the Govardhan hill. And Brahma actually took the calves and the cowherd boys away from Krishna and locked them up in the cave. So his sin is far more sinful than Indra, although they both had this bad intention kind of thing. So just to put it in context of what he's saying, it was interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. You want to last question? We'll continue till 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
Last one.
Yeah.
You know, we are going to office and doing work and all that. And when I was talking with one of the devotees, we're thinking like, say, it's so difficult to do karma yoga very, very well. And also like, say, we might be doing pop somewhere or the other if we don't give like our full attention. So any advice you would have on how to go about it?
So we are trying to do karma yoga by working in our offices, but sometimes we may do something wrong also, something sinful. So what can we do? I think that we should simply focus on cultivating a service attitude. And if we become too karma conscious, we will not be able to function in the world. As we focus on how best can I serve Krishna in this situation. So if I am trying to keep the intention of serving Krishna, I move forwards over there. Otherwise, if I say, oh, you know, this is bad karma, this is good karma. Well, it's good to broadly be aware of that, but it is just going to be, unless it's going to be a grievously wrong karma, which involves, say, breaking one of the 4 regulative principles, then it is a serious issue. But otherwise, to become too conscious of it will paralyze us, because ultimately our goal is not just to be karma free. Our goal is to be loveful, to be filled with love for Krishna. So if we are filled with love for Krishna, then that will what is take us to Krishna. Even if we become free from karma, that will only take us to Brahma Jyoti at best. That is not going to take us to Krishna. So if we focus on trying to bring a service attitude into everything that we do, then even if some karma comes up, that will be taken care of by Krishna. And the world we live in is a contaminated place. It has always been so, but now we could say the contaminations are more and more apparent and more aggressive as compared to the past. But it has always been there. Even Ayurveda, which you consider a traditional form of medicine, in their Ayurveda also they had a whole series of medicines which involve meat. See, they have many medicines which involve meat. And then they also give medicines, if you can't take this, then you can take this. So meat eating was a part of the broad Vedic culture. The Brahmanas did not eat meat. The followers of those who wanted to pursue transcendence would not eat meat. But there are people who were eating meat also. But it was not to the scale where slaughterhouses were maintained and millions of animals were slaughtered. So meat was a small part of people's lives. Prabhupada also in the Ishopanishad purport says that we have been given canine teeth. So, but they are not all 32 teeth are not canine like a lion's. A small number of teeth are canine. So a little bit of meat we can eat. We have been, if we want to, biologically, we have been equipped to eat it. But it's not. But still, the body has consequences, because that's not what the body is meant for primarily. So we don't have to too much demonize the present times. This is a time where we have to live, and we have to try to do the best in the situation. So if it is something which, as I said, if seriously involving a breaking of regulative principle, then we have to take a strong stand. But otherwise, just focusing on cultivating a service attitude, and generally, if we are earning money, giving charity is an important principle. If we do that on a regular basis and try to serve Krishna, then other things will be taken care of. Okay, thank you. So,
Is there an email address or something if we want to ask more questions in future? Can we send email to you?
Yeah, you can, but don't expect a reply. I'll try it. It just becomes. I've answered around 6,000 questions on the website, The Spiritual Scientist. So I think most questions would be answered over there. Just look over there, you may find the answers. And thespiritualscientist.com, the Spiritual Scientist. So there, you even if you search for most questions, many questions. I think today questions also discussed around 50% of the questions I also answered over there.
Did you say 6,000?
6,000, yeah.
6,000.
Yeah.
So
So
also your pen drive also has the question answer.
yeah, it has about 2,000 of them, because the early ones, they were not that well recorded, so I not put them on the pen drive. But so it's 2,000 of those questions only. I've been selected some of the good ones, good recording, good content both, and then I have put them on the pen drive.
Can I take email address?
Yeah. Actually, you could just post the question on the Spiritual Scientist. You just search over there. If you find a question, answer, you will get it. If you don't, just post as a comment over there. It will come to me.
It will come.
Yeah.
Which comment?
No. Below the site itself, if you find if you have a question on Ramayana, and if you find that question, you don't find exact question which you have.
Okay.
You just go to any other question on Ramayana and just post it as a comment. And then that will come to me directly.
Okay. Okay, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
A regular Sangha every week about Srimad Bhagavatam, so we've studied the first canto, now we're on the second canto, but we often have questions.